friends, it's Lisa Starr. Welcome to another edition of the StarCast podcast. So it's January, it's the end of it, and this time of year we're used to seeing trends and forecasts from all different associations about their industries. But I think there's none that is more anticipated, at least for spa and wellness, than the Global Wellness Institute and Global Wellness Summit Trend Report that comes out every January, and it came out this week. We were at a press event in New York where the authors of the 10 trends, as well as invited press from global publications, gathered to hear from the authors the details behind each trend. And these trends serve to fuel business strategy going forward for the year, so it's very important to pay attention. I thought I would walk through what the 10 trends were and then give you a brief description of each one, very brief, because the best part of this podcast will be that I interviewed many of the journalists and experts who were in attendance to get their take on what they heard on the trends. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So the 10 trends were, beginning with number 1, climate adaptive wellness. Number 2, the power of the pilgrimage. Number 3, from manning up to opening up. Number 4, the rise of postpartum wellness. 5, longevity has longevity. 6, a wellness check for weight loss drugs. You knew that would creep into this. Number 7, sports finds its footing in hospitality. 8, the home as highest tech health hub. Number 9, a new multi-sensory immersive art for wellness. And number 10, under the radar. So let's walk back through, and as I said, I'll give you a brief description of these. Climate adaptive wellness was presented by Jane Kitchen, and this trend has to do with how everything about climate change is affecting our mental and physical wellness. And it's not just architecture and design, but it is also urban planning, public health, and then even travel and personal care like clothing. There are resorts that are planning nighttime activities like hikes and moon yoga that are done when it's cool. There are skincare products being developed that are based on where you live, the heat or coolness of your temperature. There is clothing with sensors embedded to let you know when you are hot or cold, or even better, clothing that adapts, like that cools itself off or opens up if you need to be adjusted. So these are all as a result of our challenges with climate change, which obviously aren't going away in the next year. Trend number 2, the power of the pilgrimage, written by Eric Wilson. Everybody started walking in the pandemic. I was one. We went outside to walk. We had nothing else to do. And people sort of rediscovered the joy of walking and nature, and now are doing that in a more serious way by visiting popular pilgrimage trails all over the world. I mean, we've all heard of the Santiago de Compostela trail. 500,000 people walked that trail in 2023, many of it for wellness purposes. And many governments have undergone renovations of trails or created trails. Bhutan has created a 250-mile trail that goes all the way across the country. The idea behind this is that it's slow, right? Walking is slow, but it forces you to go slowly, observe what's around you, and leads to encounters with strangers, which also addresses the community issue that we've been facing. People want to be more with each other. Trend 3, from manning up to opening up. This was written by trend author regulars Skylar Hubler and Cecilia Gurr. And as you might guess, it has to do with men. They haven't been given the tools they need to navigate in today's world. They don't have a rule book for being a man today in 2024. Being strong and yet showing emotion. So the rise of men's only retreats, activities that are focused on social wellness, rewilding, mental health apps just for men, ways for men to open up and still be men. And I think this is a very interesting trend and has many applications in spas and wellness facilities for sure. Trend number 4, the rise of postpartum wellness. written by another regular trend author, Claire McCormick. So, there's so much care about what happens when you're pregnant, but once you have the baby, then what? It's all about the baby, and it's not about the parents. And in many countries, birth rate is going down. These countries are putting incentives in place to encourage parenting and, making sure there's social support, financial support for parents so that they continue to have children and that the countries don't get smaller. So there are many specialists that are focusing on the needs of a postpartum parents, especially women, of course, skincare, supplements, lactation, retreats, things that you can do that help you sort of get a handle on your new life post-baby. Also being addressed by Femtech. So we will certainly hear more about this year, postpartum programs throughout the world. Trend number 5, no surprise, longevity has longevity, written by Zoe Weiner and Ken Pelletier. We've been talking about longevity for a few years. It's not going away. In fact, it's here to stay. And we want to live longer, but we also want to stay healthy. It's not just about how long you can live, it's how long you can stay healthy. But the shift has really come to longevity clinics popping up around the world because traditional healthcare has failed us and people are turning to other means. We know that the highest risk factor for disease is being old. So we don't want to wait for the symptoms. We want to address them before they come, using both a hard wellness and soft wellness approach, right? Using technology and medicine, but also living healthy like the blue zones prescribe. Eating healthy, sleeping, exercising more, etc. So there's quite a bit in this trend about what the options are and how you can even go to a gym now and get treatments for longevity. So that's going to be fun to see how that evolves. Trend number 6, a wellness check for weight loss drugs, written by Emily Lawrence. Finally, Big Pharma is kind of in our arena with this new movement of Ozempic and Mounjaro and many other drugs, recasting weight loss as a biology issue, not a psychology issue. The success of these drugs cannot be denied, and I will tell you that when people were asked at the event, several hundred people, to raise their hands if they were taking or knew anyone who was trying these drugs, I think about half the room raised their hands. So these drugs are here to stay. They are still quite expensive, but new ones are in development that are much more affordable. And now we're going to see gyms jumping in here and prescribing these drugs and dealing with the gaps in healthcare because many clients who want these drugs are not really medically obese, but they just want to be more trim. So it's early days now, but we'll see how that one evolves. Trend number 7 builds on the trend that started last year with sports and hospitality, which I authored. This year, Sports Finds Its Footing in Hospitality was written by Patricia Lattice, and it really addresses the idea of the venue into wellness being sports and hospitality together. We talked last year about the Hotel Ciro, S-I-R-O, which is a Kerzner brand. It's opening in Dubai, and it is very much built for the professional athlete with world-class facilities for fitness and rest and nutrition. More hotels are going to start to pick that up. In fact, I visited the Fontainebleau Hotel in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. It has an amazing gym, like huge, massive, great equipment. I mean, serious gym equipment, not your typical hotel gym at all. Because everyone is in sports, and sports is a way to be active and be well. Communality, getting your kids outside, playing with other kids. So this will continue to grow. Sports travel industry was $40 billion in 2021 and is expected to grow even more. And of course, this year we have an Olympics in 2024. So there will be a lot of attention on sports and holidays where you can go and play your sport and still have a getaway, but not leave your fitness and wellness routines behind. Trend number 8, The Home as Highest Tech Health Hub, written by Olivia Houghton and Jessica Smith. So I went to CES this year, and there were a lot of devices, but they weren't necessarily new devices. I think what's newer is the way those devices communicate with ourselves and our healthcare providers, and the ability using AI of homes and offices to sort of customize to you, the individual. They're talking about furnishings that adjust to your mood. We spend a lot of time at home now, and can our house tell when we're sad and turn up the lights for us? We have devices that we can use to communicate with our doctors about the tiniest details about our own physiology. So we'll be able to go into our homes and have everything that we need to be as well as we can. And it will be automated by AI as we go forward. So that's a very interesting development. Number 9, a new multisensory immersive art for wellness. This was written by Ari Peralta. He's a neuroscientist, and he wrote one of the trends last year. Fascinating person, so thoughtful, so intentional. And it's really, I was amazed by how many examples of this he gave. How going into a museum and the exhibits are really shifting to become more immersive, where you can participate in it. They're multisensory, they're personalized, and it makes the museum much more fun and interactive. The impact on the brain is because we are multisensory beings, and so the more layers there are to an experience, the richer and deeper the experience is and the better context it has. Ari says that these techniques also work very well with dementia patients because hospitals are inviting artists in, and it stimulates the brain and helps people feel great. So I think that's fun, and I'm looking forward to visiting some museums with new exhibits. Trend number 10 was called Under the Radar. And that was written by Susie Ellis herself, and it's just a small collection of trends that she has noted throughout the year that weren't maybe in and of themselves warranting a whole trend, but there are things that are important to note, and some of them definitely have a place for us in the spa and wellness field. One came from Susie interviewing Simone Biles at the Global Spa Wellness Summit this year and discussing mental health challenges. And Simone made the comment that, you can come into the gym with a bandage on your arm, but you can't put a helmet on your head and get the same sympathy because you're having a mental problem. These are things we're overlooking, and we need to know that people have issues that we can't always see. I guess the idea is to be more sensitive to that, to mental wellness. Another was about lowering age limits. Really fascinating idea because we know that the youth of today are depressed, they're challenged, social media really wears on them, and yet many spas have age limits, and these young people are not really welcome until they're 16 or 18, but they need somewhere to go to see to their own wellness. So hopefully this will be a movement for spas to welcome, at least at certain times, maybe adolescents or, pre-adolescents and teens to the spa. Another trend under the radar was slow looking, coming from Anjan Chatterjee, a professor of neurology at University of Pennsylvania, more about art, but how we look at it and how we take our time. Not just taking, a few seconds to read the plaque in the museum, but really looking. It has a much stronger and different effect on the brain if you spend, say, 10 or 15 minutes looking at a piece of art. Kind of like slow living and slow eating and just that move of society to slow us down. A few of these under the radar trends also had to do with government, gross national well-being, wellness diplomacy, governments getting into wellness because keeping people well is important to keep your nation going. And also, wellness is the new why for real estate. When a building is built now, it has to have wellness components, fresh air, walking, paths, and this is still the strongest growing bubble in our 11 sectors of wellness that are tracked is the wellness real estate. And then lastly, Blue Zones 2.0. Dan Buettner and his group are starting to identify new blue zones, Singapore being the latest. And these are places that have intentionally sought out the health benefits of the blue zones and created circumstances so that those can happen where they are. I think we will start to see more cities and governments do that. So I hope that was succinct enough for you. Now, when I'm going to turn the program over to many of the authors and press folks that were there, and you'll hear their insights on these trends, which I think were really fascinating. I hope you enjoy it.
I'm Jonathan Leary, the CEO and founder of Remedy Place, and I'm here at the Global Wellness Summit listening to all of the trends. And yeah, you know, all of these things and watching what's happening in the industry is super exciting. Most of these things I feel are spot on. And, you know, I really, of course, you know, longevity is a buzzword. And at the end of the day, people just don't feel good and they want to feel good. And I think, you know, we talk about anti-aging, but it's really about actively aging and finding ways to feel and look better as we get older. And that space is just going to continually evolve because that's really the future of healthcare is self-care and preventative care. They're all the same thing.
Well, you said it, and I love that you fastened on longevity, as you would. I mean, Remedy Place is all about staying vital longer.
Yeah.
We can't go backwards, but what can we make out of what we have, and how can we be the best you can be, right?
100%. I mean, we only get one body, and it's our number one asset, and we need to start treating it like that, you know?
So what's the most popular service at Remedy Place? What do most people join for?
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves it because it's their new way to socialize, right? It doesn't matter what the experience is. They're all booked out all day. Mm-hmm. It's really about them having a new way to have a date, or where they would meet friends after work instead of a drink, or what they would do instead of a Sunday brunch or a corporate outing. But everything there is social, and everything has the opportunity to do with somebody else, which is really our goal. Not only to make people feel better, but give them a new way to socialize in a healthy manner. Well,
talk about trendsetter. You were on trend, Jonathan, when you opened the first one.
Yeah.
I remember reading about it and saying, Social Wellness Club, what is that? And I went to L.A. to see it.
Yeah.
Probably it was January of 20.
Yeah.
And it had just opened, and I thought, this is the coolest thing ever. So here you are. How many are open now?
We have 2 open, 2 in construction, and a lot left in the roadmap. Yeah.
Because everybody wants longevity. So other trends that we heard today that might apply to you?
Yeah, I think from manning up to opening up, I think there's a big revolution in health for men. You know, I think especially in the self-care space, or, you know, anything, like, women know how to take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. You know, they don't have an ego, and they fully understand, like, that they need care. Right, and I think for men, a lot of the time, they definitely didn't talk about emotions.
Right.
Definitely didn't talk about feelings. And I think of, like, my father's generation, you know, like, those things were just, that's not what a man does. So it's cool that these younger generations are understanding it is important to talk about emotions and feelings, and that all of us, because we're all humans, need to take care of ourselves.
For sure.
You know?
So as a business operator, do you pay attention to these trends every year?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I live these trends, and I am listening to patients and guests, and our data pool is so big. You know, I had my private practice for 5 years before Remedy opened. I've been working on Remedy since 2012, and all of this stuff is in my space. You know, like, I think when most people think about, you know, health and wellness, it's like, you know, you need the top medical doctors or the medical community, but medical doctors studied medicine. You know, I've been studying these self-care practices because my focus was always sports medicine. So I was always trying to figure out, how do people perform? How do we make people the healthiest they can be? And now, I mean, everyone's performing in life, so I just need to treat everyone like I treated my pro athletes.
Well, we are lucky to have you in our camp. Dr. Jonathan Leary, CEO of Remedy Place. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jones, and I run Spa and Wellness Mexicaribe magazine, covering Mexico, Caribbean, and Latin America. And I have really enjoyed being here in New York for the press event for the Global Wellness Summit 2024 Trends.
And we're happy to have you. Sarah has also been a guest on the podcast many years ago about your story, which is fascinating. Look her up. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
And today there was so much incredible information. A lot of things stood out, but if I think about the highlights from this morning's trends, I would say that definitely the climate adaptive wellness was really interesting. As we see the temperatures increasing and the hottest years on record happening again and again, more and more technology around keeping people cooler and keeping cities cooler and redeveloping or redesigning how buildings are built and people traveling to cooler destinations rather than hotter destinations. Very interesting. The home as highest tech health hub, I think, is fascinating. We're all so driven by looking at our data from our devices, our wearables, and the fact that more and more of this is going to come into the home is really interesting. We'll be able to monitor a lot of different health metrics and see really medical level data from the comfort of our home. So that, I think, is fascinating. And I mean, longevity, the trend in, dare I say it, biohacking, or let's say health optimization, is not going away, and learning from what people are doing on the forefront of that is definitely something in the wellness industry that we need to stay aware of, certainly. And yeah, everything, all of them really. The pilgrimage, the walking trips, multi-day walking trips, the male retreats, helping men open up and become more vulnerable rather than manning up. But I think that's fascinating.
So, Sarah, how do you see these trickling down to the day spa or the hotel spa? You're based in Mexico. How will they make use of this kind of information?
I think that there's a lot that they can do. In terms of, longevity, that's what everyone wants. We all want to be healthier for longer. And just looking at the blue zone trends in longevity, health and wellness resorts can bring in those pillars of wellness and help to shape a guest's stay based on the very real data and scientific studies that the blue zones has brought to us. Things like sports in hospitality, seeing how people want to have access to the sports they love and then access to the facilities through which they can recover is going to be fascinating. And as someone said on stage, that the future of hospitality, they're going to have the high-end hotels. They're going to see high-end hotels having hyperbaric chambers, having cryotherapy, having lymphatic drainage equipment, and all of these new amazing technologies. And I think that eventually we'll see it come down into the 4-star, 3-star. It's always going to start at the high end first, and then it's going to trickle down into the rest of hospitality.
And yet, I know that you practice cryotherapy regularly on the beach in a bucket, right? So it doesn't have to be in a facility.
It doesn't. And, when people talk about biohacking or health optimization, everyone always thinks of the things that cost a fortune and the high-tech new innovations or new supplements or injectable things or devices that we put ourselves in. But biohacking is as simple as meditation and breath work and seeing sunlight at the right times to set our circadian rhythm, and yoga. And when I speak about biohacking to audiences around Latin America, I like to reframe it and focus on the fact that there are many ways to influence or hack or harmonize our system as human beings, and it doesn't always have to be something that we pay a lot of money for or do something invasive or something really out there to affect our system or to positively influence our health.
Well, we know that everybody wants to live longer and be healthy in that time. It's not just about living longer, right? It's about having health for a longer period. And someone said earlier, we used to have to convince people they needed this, and now we have to control the demand because everybody wants to be well. mean, this is a really good time for the wellness industry, would you say?
It really is. And something that someone said on stage at the Global Wellness Summit struck me, because they said that in previous years, hospitality industry from the top, wellness never really had the full backing of the people at the top who are the decision makers for all of the global brands we think of in hospitality. And now it does. Wellness has their attention and it is their focus, and they know that if they don't focus on wellness, they'll be left behind in the market. So I think that's fascinating, and we're only going to see this grow across all hospitality brands all across the world.
Well, that's a message to everyone listening. Don't get left behind. Get on the trends. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I'm Erica Huss. I'm a freelancer. I write for various blogs and publications. I also have my own podcast, All Too Well. I have a newsletter. I think of myself as a wellness whisperer.
Awesome.
And my goal is really to bring ideas and information and things like we've learned in this room today and try to translate them to a mass audience, because I really do believe that wellness should be more democratic. It should be something that everybody can connect to in one way or another. And I'm formerly a founder myself in CPG. I had a couple of different wellness startups, varying degrees of success, including the first of the juice cleanse companies way back in the early 2000s.
Wow.
And
you were ahead of your time.
I was ahead of my time. And yeah, I think hearing what we were discussing today, I was particularly interested in what they described as that intersection between hard care and soft care, and how both are kind of equally trending. And that's a kind of an intersection that's really interesting to me, because as much as I get excited about what's new in hard care, and by that it's like about technology and, the longevity labs and things that a very small percentage of us actually have access to, I think the soft care, the lo-fi elements, talking about like the pilgrimage, that I thought was super fascinating.
Me too.
And the concept of manning up around this male bonding experience. Certainly an interest in the cognitive health and mental well-being of us as a culture is what's really interesting to me.
So do you find that these wellness trends have legs? Like you as a journalist look at this, there's so many lists that come out in January, and we all start off the year with these great ideas. How do consumers respond, do you think, to all of this information?
I think some of them have legs. I think some of them are kind of iterations of earlier trends, ideas. I mean, there's not a ton that feels like it's novel and new. But even just, for example, something like this Art of the Pilgrimage, right? We are hearkening back to one of our earliest, most primitive methodologies.
Before it was on a trend list. Though.
Exactly. And now we're coining it, and we're making it into something that feels like a little bit more tangible that people can connect to. So I think that, to me, it's the stuff that feels like it's rooted in something that's really truly authentic, and something that that resonates with us all is what stays. And it's the stuff that you hear about or you see on TikTok that feels a little flimsy, or like, I don't know, I guess I'll try it. Those types of things feel more fleeting in my mind.
So what do consumers who read your publications, what are they looking for in terms of their own personal wellness? I
think, again, especially with my newsletter, what I really try to do is distill something down so that it feels like you can get your arms around it, so that you don't have to be a quote-unquote wellness person in order to understand, hey, some bright light first thing in the morning is actually super helpful for you. Walking around your block for 5 minutes after you eat a meal is actually amazing for your metabolic health. Those types of very tangible, grounded takeaway facts are what feels the most resonant to me. And then, of course, being able to talk about the big picture ideas and where we might be going. And in 50 years, maybe we'll all have access to longevity labs. But for now, it's trying to distill out what research and science is showing us and make it feel like even somebody who's, doesn't consider themselves to be interested in wellness can still benefit from that.
Well, if everything we heard in the room today was true, we'll all live till 100.
Exactly.
So we have a lot of time to try all of this. Erica, tell us where we can find your newsletter and your podcast.
So you can go to my website, which is ericahuss.com, Huss, or you can find the podcast, which is All Too Well, on all of the podcast platforms, and then there will be some links in those show notes for how you can sign up for my newsletter.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Joe Holder. I'm a contributor to GQ. And today at the Global Wellness Summit, what I found interesting was a reinvigoration for the love of sport. I think as adults definitely want, community and recreation combined in a way that isn't overwhelming. And I think moving away from group classes in the way it once was is definitely a thing. And then, as a man, as you see, and somebody writes from wellness, it definitely over-indexes women-oriented, and seeing the trend regarding kind of an embracing of modern masculinity, still grounded in kind of the foundational roots associated with some of the positive traits of what it means to be a man, I think was powerful. So
you think women get more input on that than the men do?
Without a doubt.
Really?
Yeah.
Because we think of men as being the athletes. So,
Well, it's always been, people try to conceptualize the difference between fitness and wellness. Instead of them being inclusive, you kind of silo men within fitness, you silo women within beauty and wellness. And now you've seen a cross-pollination between the two, especially with the rise of kind of cycle-oriented work for women, especially with fitness, and then with men looking at the loneliness epidemic. Men commit suicides much more than women, and then there's a lack of shared spaces that are built around men besides, alcohol. So, it's also connected to the rise of, the non-alcoholic industry. But yeah, the input of women is much greater in wellness than men.
Well, I have to say we like that. But we do, of course, want there to be a space for the men. We all need to be well together. Mm-hmm. And it's good to hear that resonated with you. Your readers are predominantly male. Mm-hmm. What sorts of things are they interested in? I mean, everyone wants to be healthy. Is there anything specific you think they're looking for?
Yeah, I think people are interested more around like the culture and entertainment angle that's associated with wellness, how to make it practical for the everyday life. I don't really think, and no shade to them, but the men's health thought process of just how to sculpt an abs and a six pack in 6 weeks isn't really what's hitting. It's more so how do I be successful with the things that are necessary in my life, which are romantic relationships, financial health, but also what's going on with my mental, emotional, and then sprinkle in fitness. So really it is, it's an overused term, but it is holistic. More people are very interested about how do I design a wellness plan, not just a fitness plan. Because at the end of the day, fitness is easy. Mm-hmm. It's the wellness. It's the, how are you feeling internally, the outside metrics that are important for one's health too. We want to pretend like money and stuff doesn't matter, and it does. Financial health is key, and there's a lot of anxiety connected to that. But most of it really is holistic well-being, not separating the mind and body anymore, and then figuring out how to be tough while at the same time how to be soft with your emotional side, and then how to take care of your true health and not just fitness and performance.
Well, you're right. That's like a sort of renaissance movement for men right now, right? Mm-hmm. It's showing the emotional side. I mean, GQ used to be more about fashion, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's more about yourself, self-care.
Well, GQ still will always be about fashion, but one of the things, you got to put on the suit. Who's in the suit, right? So it's looking at it from that whole perspective, not just what you're wearing, how you're thinking, how you're moving, how you're grooving, and grooming, and also grooving, I guess, but like how you're just taking care of yourself. So looking at it, the integration of sport, culture, and wellness has never been more, prescient in, how big the business is and how connected it is to everyday life. There's a need to create a foundational literacy around it and connect that to culture, the readers tend to gravitate to.
Mm-hmm. That's really good, Joe. I mean, so the longevity trend, the sports and hospitality sort of resonates with you, manning up. What did you think about the museum bit, the multi-sensory wellness, like experiential wellness? Do you think that has a role also?
I think it has a role, but it was too myopically focused on sensory experiences instead of what it's relating to is two different things. It's the basically Ray Oldenburg's old work about third places and spaces. Mm-hmm. We need that, especially as it relates to the arts. So really what it's saying is like, how do you use communal spaces to facilitate wellness, right? That's design.
Exactly.
And then the other side of it really he was trying to explain was the concept of interoception, especially as AI increases. Interoception is an additional sense of the body that basically helps if the human is able to understand your internal feelings and senses. And technology seems to be pulling us out of that, whether it's AI or use of phones, social media, whatever. And you see a lot of it in relation to behavioral disorders. There's a reduced sense of interoception. So the question is like, how do we pay more attention to our senses? How do we not get overstimulated, right? Because noise pollution is an issue, air pollution is an issue, digital stimulation is an issue. And then it becomes that situation of, okay, are there public spaces that are have a low barrier to entry that could promote well-being through helping us understand and experience through our senses? Mm-hmm. Museums are part of that, but also so are parks, so are whatever. It could be anything. And an ability to really just stop, pause, and experience will go a long way for health and wellness, because that's really all that meditation and mindfulness is trying to make you do.
You really nailed it. It's just stop and listen. You know those stop signs that say stop, look, and listen before you go?
Yeah.
We're just all moving too fast, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I do every day is I wake up in the morning, I don't check my phone, right? It's just like you stop, pause, and experience. How am I feeling? What is my body telling me? Can I decode my senses, right? Most people are just go, 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 go. Like, where's the homeroom for your body and mind? Like taking that second to just experience life as it's happening. And that's really, why, meditation and mindfulness is important. It's just monitoring. Everybody thinks you have to focus, when really it's just monitor. Mm-hmm. And most people don't even have a vocabulary to describe what their body is telling them every day. And that's crazy.
That is crazy. Well said, Joe Holder. We can read your column in GQ?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather Mikesell with Well-Defined Media, and I have to say that of all the trends that we talked about this morning, longevity is probably the biggest one that I'm hearing about. I feel like that's on the top of everyone's mind at the moment, and not just living longer, but living healthier for the most part. And also the wellness check for weight loss drugs. I feel like everyone is talking about Ozempic and all of them.
Is there a lot of comment on your website about that?
I just feel like I was just at a conference that our Women Leadership Summit last week, and it came up a lot, actually. We had a functional doctor speaking, and everyone wanted to know, Do they want to know, is it safe for me? Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Definitely. But also, I think no one really understands, how do you get off these drugs? Once you stop taking them...
What happens?
Yeah, because, when you learn that how the brain is affected and how it suppresses your appetite, but that means, how do you get off them? Because once you stop taking them, they stop working. So I think that's definitely a big issue. And just as someone who is very into the wellness space, I'm also wondering if it's putting a stop to research in other areas, because I was hearing a lot about how gut health can impact obesity and such, and how it could be tied to gut health. So it may have nothing to do, we all metabolize things differently.
Sure.
But does that research kind of end because we have this other so-called solution, if that's what it is?
It's a little amazing to me how many people want to take it.
It does. I had lunch with a friend of mine who said that she had just asked her doctor about it, and she doesn't have any weight to lose.
Right, people that aren't obese. It's one thing if you're medically obese or you have other challenges, absolutely, but it's just interesting. I mean...
It's a little alarming, especially because she said her doctor basically said, you're not there yet. And I was like, I don't think you're ever going to be there.
Hopefully.
You're not obese. You're not even overweight. Right. So what are you taking it for? So I also worry that people just start overprescribing, because when people start demanding things, they'll just go to a doctor who will give it to them whether they need it or not. I mean, I understand it for people who have diabetes and things like that.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Was there any other trend like the postpartum wellness or the pilgrimage or anything that resonated with you, Heather?
The postpartum wellness I thought was very interesting, because I see a lot on social media about people talking about how women's pain is minimized, especially, if it has to do with birth. It's kind of like, you just had a baby.
You're supposed to.
Yeah, that's what happens. And so just that dismissive sense sometimes that I think women feel when they're talking, to their healthcare provider. It's just kind of like, not being taken seriously and just thinking, oh, that's just the way it is. And I don't necessarily know that that's always has to be true.
Well, let's see what happens now that these trends are out there.
Definitely.
Anyway, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, now we are so lucky to have a guest that I had no idea was going to be here when I came up to New York this morning, Kathy Chan, managing partner for Finn Partners Greater China. But Kathy and I have known each other a long time.
Very long time.
Like when it was in the early aughts, I guess, when I was teaching in Hong Kong all the time. So it's always so great to see you. Kathy is a board member of the Global Wellness Summit, and she is here today to speak on trends for travel because she's really a travel expert. And so we're going to ask Kathy, what of the 10 trends were presented today, some of them impact travel. So could you speak to what you heard that, maybe you hadn't heard or you think has legs? And then I'd like to ask you more about what you see from your Asia perspective.
Sure. So, obviously, let me speak first to what is very much up my alley, and that is the power of pilgrimage. And as I said earlier today, pilgrimages have been around for centuries, right? It's nothing new. But I think the agnostic version of pilgrimages are what we're seeing today largely because of a number of contributing factors. Number one is this renewed appreciation for nature and being in nature, our growing awareness for the importance of walking, right? And lastly, this hunger, this need for collective experience. So many people who embark on some form of a pilgrimage, whether it's the Santiago de Compostela in Spain or, doing the Bhutan Trail, they're doing that to mark a milestone in their life or to celebrate something with a loved one. And all of these things have become much more amplified because of the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic. So, but I think this whole notion of pilgrimages is really more of a reflection of where travel is headed. We see that travelers are shifting away from just kind of impulse travel, which we saw from revenge travel, to a much more considered, more, I would say more intentional, a deep intentionality to the types of travel experience that they're seeking today. And whether it is, an expression of slow travel or what, but it's really more of the need to be transformed. When we travel today, we're looking to be transformed, right? In one shape or form. And I think this is really where travel is headed, and this is where a lot of the experience are going to be developed.
So it sounds like that's going to really raise the bar for properties, spas, and hotels to perform.
Absolutely, but it's also, it's looking holistically at what you have to offer. So, if you're a resort, it's not just thinking about the things that you can offer within the confines of a resort, but actually what the sense of place has to offer and bringing in so much of the nature and the environment, It's also informing the way destinations are basically creating their products, their experiences. So it's definitely where it's headed. We're seeing a revival of, whether it's boats and slow travel and rail, just a boom in rail traveling through trains. So, and I just think that this is where we're going. This notion that we had before, where you try and do 20 cities in 10 days. I think that's definitely out.
People want a deeper, more lasting experience from their travel.
They do, and it's very intentional. They're going, whether it has a medical component to it or a health component to it, like some of the examples cited in today's trends, whereby you have resorts offering, treatments and therapies geared towards addressing fertility, menopause, or hair transplants like Estenova, this clinic in Istanbul, which
that's
I thought
amazing,
was brilliant. In 2 nights you can get a full head of hair.
That's so great.
To maybe wanting to disappear and go to do a workshop on kintsugi, which is another form of meditation, but in a very craft and art experience in Japan. So we all want to come back as if we've been transformed in one shape or form.
Well, Kathy, you have a unique perspective, having been grown up in the U.S., moved to China or Hong Kong. Your kids are in America. You're all over the world. So what do you see in these other trends that you think is impactful in the rest of the world? You know, we're all about trends in the U.S. We love these lists.
Yes.
January is full of lists.
Yeah.
What does the rest of the world look at this and how do they react?
Well, I think, you know, I mean, obviously there are aspects of this trends that have a much more local expression of it. I mean, a good example, one of the trends cited today had to do with the rise of postpartum wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And just yesterday's New York Times, there was a whole story about these clinics that have propped up that are basically taking care of women after they deliver. And, you know, this is an expression of a tradition very much in Asia, in Asian countries like Korea, like China, where there is a special recovery phase for new mothers or mothers in general who've just given birth and the way they are cared for. So I think that, yes, while these oftentimes these trends are seen through the lens of what's happening in the Western world, there are applications of that happening elsewhere. So any of these trends in particular do you think will be something we'll be talking about in the future, like climate adaptive wellness? Absolutely. I think, you know, it's, you know, the future. I mean, we're going to have heat conferences and just everything to try and figure out how are we, you know, dealing with an increasingly heating up, you know, planet, whether it means, you know, more and more floating cities to, you know, how we're designing buildings and cities, the kinds of materials that will be available to us, the way we travel, you know, because seasonality is being changed entirely now. You know, I mean, who would want to be in Italy in July to August, right? Given that it's like, it's crazy. The weather and their air conditioning is the greatest anyway. Exactly. I love Italy, but... So, but that's changing. So I think definitely the climate is changing the way we're going to travel. Well, thank you again for joining us, Kathy. It's great to see you as always. My pleasure.
I'm Jane Kitchen. I'm editor-at-large at Spa Business Magazine, and I was lucky enough to write one of the trends this year for the Global Wellness Summit.
And it was so interesting, Jane, what you wrote.
Thank you, Lisa.
I always like what you write. Well, tell us about your climate adaptive wellness trend.
Adaptive wellness. I mean, it's quite a broad trend, and it was, you know, a bit difficult to condense down into a few minutes for this event.
Right.
But it's really talking about, and there's so much in the report, but it's talking about the way in which kind of living in a ever more heat-stressed planet is going to affect our industry, right? So, and it's kind of, I sort of broke it down into 4 sections. So it's everything from how we're going to, you know, work with architecture and build buildings so that they don't have to use as much air conditioning to what we're going to do in terms of like urban areas and public health, and then talking about like implications for spa and wellness, but then also a sort of a new trend of all this new cooling wellness tech for clothing, which is really kind of
that was fascinating.
Yeah.
So where you can wear something that cools you off. I mean, of course, there's dry wick fabric now, but this is more
different. This is much more high tech, and a lot of it's still like, you know, it's being developed at universities, but it's not out in the marketplace yet. Maybe 5 to 10 years, but these like kind of really interesting things where they're manipulating fabric so it can like let more or less radiation in, so it keeps you warmer or cooler, or it can like expand and contract based on the temperature outside. So you could just wear like one layer, and then if it gets hotter out, it gets that. I mean, you know, it's really kind of cool stuff. Yeah. So that's not quite in the marketplace yet. There is stuff that's in the marketplace that's a little more low tech, but, you know, it's just, there's a sense in which that's all going to go much more mainstream in the next few years. So.
Well, it was fascinating, and you had the honor of going first, so you were able to listen to some of the any of the other trends resonate with you?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good trends this year. I really like the power of the pilgrimage, and I think it's, you know, it's part of a trend that I've been noticing, this sense in which like just walking. I mean, it sounds so simple, but just walking, and people are rediscovering the power of walking and the health benefits of walking, and to move that into like a walking holiday, and to do, I have certainly seen like lots more people who I know doing these kind of big iconic trails. So I think that's really interesting. I'm actually fascinated with everything that's going on with these weight loss drugs because it's not exploded where I live in the UK like it has here. And just coming over here, I'm like, oh my gosh,
I know, it's all anyone can talk about.
And there's a lot of potential there, but so that's definitely, I think, like the wellness world needs to somehow be involved with that as well. And I think there was a lot of good conversation around that. What else? I think, it's interesting because that last trend, which was Susie's, kind of under the radar things, which is just a lot of like different things that she wanted to make sure weren't overlooked. But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that came out of there. I think in particular this sense of what Amy McDonald brought up at the summit, that about how we need to be thinking about how we're like addressing teenagers and, all the anxiety they're dealing with in a meaningful way, not in a,
No, it was a really good point I hadn't thought of, but, kids are not welcomed in spas. Yeah. And sometimes not even until they're 18 or 16 can they have a service. Yeah. Or as Beth said, it's infantilized by saying, princess manicure and all. But, the spa needs to be a place for them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Teenagers are under so much pressure today.
Yeah. And I think, the other one was Ari's trend about the multisensory art and how that's going to be sort of moving into wellness. And he and I were just having a conversation about the Chiusi Terme in Milan that has that thunderstorm room that's really immersive. And I think that's, I've been kind of watching that going on and thinking like, gosh, there's so much that the spa world can do to use similar things and kind of create these really immersive experiences.
Well, hopefully after everybody reads the trends this year, we'll see more of it. Thanks for joining us, Jane.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
So we're going to switch tacks here, and not a journalist, but someone that knows even more about wellness. We are joined by Mia Kyrikos, who not only is she the CEO of Kyrikos & Associates, but she's also a founding board member of the Global Wellness Summit. And she has been through, I don't know, how many trend presentations, Mia?
Probably all 20 of them, actually.
Right. So I thought it would be great to get Mia's perspective as someone who's been on the front lines of wellness for most of your career. What did you hear today that you thought was fresh or new or a different take?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things I heard. I'll just say across the board, one blanket comment is just how much this industry's arrived. We used to be all about creating demand, and now we have to find the best ways to cater to it.
To manage demand, you're so right.
Which has been huge from a consumer standpoint. Big themes, I think off the bat, climate adaptive wellness. I think companies, public, private stakeholders, even consumers are realizing the connection between planetary, personal, and community well-being. And so I think climate's a great example of that. And so I think it's going to be a call to action for business owners to really think about, are you climate enhancing or climate negatively impacting the climate? So I think that's going to be a really big trend that we have to pay attention to. I loved from manning up to opening up. It's something that my husband and my father and I have all talked about. That's something where not having a rule book for what it means to be a man in 2024 and how we should be acting in our personal lives and professional lives, I think that's a big one. Longevity, having longevity, it's great. Like, it's both completely a trend and an eye roll, because ultimately if you're thinking about living a life that's preventative and a world that is free of preventable lifestyle disease, that's ultimately what we have been talking about for 20 years.
The moonshot.
Right. But I think the world is finally caught up, and it's not just so much the length of your years, but the quality of them for longer. And I think that's, couldn't be more now. I also think there's this catch-22 of trend number 8 about the home as highest tech health hub. I think society is really trying to find the happy medium between technology and embracing it and having it be an enabler to their longevity, for example, and the very real need to detox from technology since we're such an always-on society now. And I do think consumers are struggling with the happy medium. It's like, do you build the house that has all the tech, or do you escape the tech and retreat into a place filled with nature? And which one's ultimately going to be the best for your well-being is $1 million question.
It is a multi-million-dollar question. I mean, you have so much tech at our fingertips. Look what we have in our pockets now that you and I as young women could never have imagined. Our kids take it for granted, and now, like, do we live with it, or is it better to go be hermits in the wilderness? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but if, you have two wellness lifestyle experts right here on your podcast, and you live in Pennsylvania, and I live in Maine, and we take doses of the city and the technology as our work requires, and of course we love it, but is that the ultimate the way that we sort of energize ourselves or sustain our energy for the world we live in now? There's a happy medium to both, right? So I do think it's something everyone's struggling with every day. And I also agree with Frank Littman, who was at today's event, who said he does think the hyper-focus on longevity is not a particularly healthy thing to do. And we all know how to live well if we take self-care seriously. So,
well, it's going to be a conundrum because, like, I was at CES in Vegas a few weeks ago, and there weren't a lot of new devices this year. It was more about new ways to use the devices we have and new technologies that, as Dr. Littman said, you can look inside your body. There's the Withings thing you can hold up to your abdomen and it send it to your doctor what your bowel sounds like, what your heart's doing. And so consumers having access to all of this information is maybe too much for them, right? Because how much of us actually look at the Fitbit and see what it says? What are we doing with all this data?
Yeah, I mean, I grapple with this every day for clients and consumers, and I really, I come from a very deep Greek heritage, and that lifestyle, which has been sort of recognized in the blue zones, and I actually took a transformational trip a year ago to Tanzania where I interviewed tribes of people that live as we did 1,000 years ago. And I have to be honest, I feel like the best cues and roots of how we can live long well still comes from these ancient cultures. And I think we have to look at more of technology as an enabler and an information resource, not the cure to what we're ultimately looking for from a preventative lifestyle approach.
Well, we really appreciate that Global Wellness puts these trends out every year. It's so important. We have so many members of the mainstream media here today, and we're asking them what they think. But for people that have been in wellness a long time, where does this lead? How does it trickle down to the business operations level?
I think we are in an amazing time in history where the availability of both the science and evidence behind so many of these wellness modalities is there. And years ago, when we were operating facilities ourselves, it didn't exist. And I also think there's so much more data from a business standpoint. What's the impact, the business outcomes of investing in the global wellness economy? So really the take home for those on the line level is the data exists for you to make a case to consumers, to investors, to brands. The question is taking the time to sift through it in a manner that's going to support your unique business and your unique part of the world. But we have a privilege and somewhat we're overwhelmed by the level of information out there, but the good news is that it finally exists. And these media outlets that are here today, Forbes, GQ, the New York Times, I mean, these are people that wouldn't give this industry the time of day 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so I'm really excited about them championing our work because they haven't always been on our side, and now they're here in droves. So,
well, partly due to the work you and your fellow board members have done before you. Thanks for all of that.
My pleasure.